Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for making your way out here on a rainy Tuesday afternoon to be a part of the Planning Commission meeting. We're excited to see so many people here and hear what you have to say and make sure that we can understand the concerns that are before the Planning Commission from all sides. My name is Lindsay Gersay. I am the chairperson of the Johnson County Planning Commission, and so welcome. With that, can we start with a roll call?
Yes, Gregory Wolf is absent. David Paderas.
Present.
Brad Miller is absent. Lindsay Grisay.
Here.
Fred Starrett. Stephen McGank.
Here.
Tim Orick. Leslie Hind.
Present.
Craig Connell.
Here.
Andrew Logan is absent. And Kevin Hogan.
Present.
Thank you. We do have a quorum.
All right. So the first agenda item is actually public comment, but my assumption, without wanting to be presumptuous, right, is that there's most of the people are here to have a public comment regarding a particular item that's on our agenda. The first public comment in our agenda tonight is just a general public comment for items that are not before the board tonight. So if you have any just general concerns, and so I think we'll open it up to that public comment here. Jay, is that kind of what the
Yes,
agenda is?
Jay Leipzig, that is correct.
Okay, so we'll open it up to general public comment for anybody who wishes to make a public comment regarding a particular item that's on the agenda. I believe there's a sign-up sheet in the back, and that'll help us kind of try to keep a orderly process through your public comments. So you'll have your opportunity at this a little bit later in the meeting tonight.
Yeah, and Chair, if I could just go ahead and read that Zoom statement since we
Sure,
have a
please.
few Zoom people. Sure. This meeting is now being recorded in the board hearing room with Planning Commission members attending in person. There's also an option for virtual attendance on Zoom webinar. For Zoom participants wishing to speak, please use the raise hand function in the Zoom app at the start of the agenda item on which you desire to comment. Comments will be received from in-person attendees first, followed by Zoom participants. When it is your turn to speak, the moderator will recognize you by the name or phone number used to join the Zoom webinar, and your microphone will be unmuted. Please state your name and the community where you reside for the record, followed by your comments. All public speakers will be limited to 2 minutes unless the chair designates a different time period. If you have trouble with Zoom, please call 913-715-9666. Board members, staff, and presenters, please state your name every time you begin talking, and please speak into the microphone so your comments can be transcribed for the record. This is a public meeting. We are presenting live and recording the meeting. Thank you.
Lindsay Gersay, so thank you very much. Are there any individuals here in person that would like to make a general public comment on something that's not on the agenda? That was my assumption. Is there anybody on Zoom that also has a general public comment that they would like to make? Perfect. That was also my assumption. Fellow commissioners, are there any ex parte communications or disclosures that anybody here would like to make that they've had since the last board meeting? No. Did I see that there were some emails that were sent to the Planning Commission, Mr. Leipzig?
Yes, Madam Chair, Jay Leipzig, and I was going to mention those during my comments before I introduce the item for item G.
Okay, perfect. Well, we will skip over that for a second. Do any of the commissioners have any additions or deletions that they would like to make to the agenda for tonight? Okay, hearing none. In our packets are a copy of the meeting minutes from the August 26th, 2025 meeting. Do any commissioners have any amendments they want to make or errors they want to correct in those meeting minutes? And if not, can I get a motion to approve the meeting minutes?
I'll make the motion that we approve the minutes.
A second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Coming in at the end there. All opposed? No. Okay, so the meeting minutes are officially entered in. And I think that'll take us to item G on the agenda. Mr. Leipzig, it sounded like you would like to do an introduction.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. As you just mentioned, I would like a brief introduction on this topic this evening for our comprehensive plan amendments regarding the comprehensive arterial road network plan, also our housing types. In your packet this evening is a memorandum from staff to the Planning Commission. We also have the revised or the amended version of Chapter 2, the land use plan. Also, Chapter 4, the transportation plan within the comprehensive arterial or the comprehensive plan. Also, our policy area map and our comprehensive arterial road network plan is also included in the packet, as well as the Johnson County Transportation Connection Plan fact sheet that the Public Works Department prepared. That was all included in the packet. Also, as part of the record this evening, I received a number of emails. There were comments that were included in the packet received prior to September 16th, 2025. Those are all included as well and are on the website. We also received an email from James Thomas on August the 18th that has been signed by several property owners. It's called Saving Edgerton Road. That is also on the county's website and will be submitted as part of the record this evening as well. So those are the documents that have been included in the packet or submitted ahead of time. And with that, I'll kind of begin a quick introduction to the topic. And we're going to tag team this evening. Several of us will be speaking. After me will be Sean Penley, our Deputy Director, and Karen Miller, our Senior Planner with the Planning Department is here as well. And then Jeffrey Bose with the Public Works Department is here to answer questions as well. So just a quick update on this topic. Before the Planning Commission on June 24th, this Transportation Connection Plan was presented to the Planning Commission. Prior to that, on June the 11th, there was an open house at the DeSoto Senior Center that Public Works sponsored, and we had a good turnout for that evening as well. On August 26th, presented the draft comprehensive plan update, including the CARNUP updates, review and discussion by the Planning Commission. And then on September 23rd, which is this evening, we are holding a public hearing on this item and providing a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners. The Board of County Commissioners action May 29th, they received an update on the Johnson County Transportation Connection Plan. That was a study update. In other words, no action taken. It was just a general work session for them or study update. And then we anticipate that this item would be brought before the Board of County Commissioners on October 23rd. That's a tentative date, depending on if there is a recommendation made this evening and it's brought forward. So with that, that's my introduction. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Sean Penley for some additional comments about CARNUP.
Thank you, Jay. Good evening, Commissioners. Sean Penley, County Planning staff. So I'm going to go through the overview of the Comprehensive Arterial Road Network Plan and then turn it over to Karen Miller to talk about some additional updates. This is all part of the Johnson County Rural Comprehensive Plan and proposed updates. So I'll start with the CARNUP plan. So the purpose of CARNUP, this was, first of all, CARNUP was adopted in 1999 as part of the comprehensive plan, and the intent was for a plan for future roadways in southern and western Johnson County. CARNUP is recommending, and it includes recommendations for the development of both major and minor arterial roads and the systems through the unincorporated area, and that do interconnect the county's arterial roads and the regional roadway network. So you hear a lot of talk about the connections with other jurisdictions, and we realize that the county is continuing to grow as well as cities, and that changes. And so we want to be consistent both with the unincorporated area and also adjacent jurisdictions. CARNUP does include recommendations for typical roadway design standards as well as strategies for ensuring adequate rights-of-way will be available for future roadway network improvements. And as another purpose, this also integrates access management for arterial roads. That's a big part of that. CARNUP is not only looking at roadway types, but also access management or control or the locations for future driveways that that are fronting or accessing onto the arterial roads. That's a big part of CARNIP. We're looking at that for future design, and we'll talk about that as well. So there have been some misconceptions or misunderstandings about what the purpose of CARNIP is. We understand there's a lot of interest in this from the public and a lot of concerns about future roadway improvements. And one thing we do want to emphasize is the things that CARNIP is not, and then we'll talk about what it is. CARNIP is not a construction plan or construction documents for any particular arterial road. There is no construction schedule or timeline for improvements of these roads. There's no engineering drawings that have been approved, no roadway design plans, and there is no alignment or realignment studies for any particular route. This is really looking at more of a future long-range planning document for the arterial roads in the county, and that is the purpose. And we'll talk again about some of the specifics of that. So the CARNIP plan, we mentioned, is adopted as part of the Rural Comprehensive Plan, and there are policies regarding CARNIP that are adopted as part of the comprehensive plan, and it's primarily located in Chapter 4 of the comp plan, the transportation section. And it does follow the recommendations that are going to be discussed this evening do follow the recommendations from the Johnson County Transportation Connection Plan. If you recall, we've had previous discussions with the Planning Commission, and we've had some open house meetings, as Jay mentioned, as part of this update. The Public Works Department conducted, along with the other jurisdictions in the regional area, conducted a transportation connection plan with the assistance of consultants and KDOT, looking at the larger area for transportation improvements or transportation plan for the future or the surrounding areas. And these recommendations that are in the current plan this evening were all following those recommendations that were adopted as part of the Transportation Connection Plan. And there is a fact sheet that is included in your packet that summarizes all of those recommendations. And we'll go through those this evening. The updates are, again, part of the comprehensive plan. There's updates within Section 2 for the Rural Transportation Connection System, and also the county's policy area map, which Karen Miller will discuss. There are some updates that CARNIP is also integrated with that policy area map, and we'll talk about that as well. But there are no changes, by the way, for future land use as part of this update. So the CARNIP plan, this is just a look at the existing CARNIP map. And so we're looking at the unincorporated areas of Johnson County. So all of the city areas are going to be grayed out. That's their jurisdictions for the cities. And this is the current adopted CARNIP plan, and we'll go through the updates, but this just shows the different types of designations for the types of CARNIP roads, and we'll outline each of those. It, again, was adopted as part of the comprehensive plan. It preserves and manages access for arterial roads, and this also helps to inform the public about arterial road types and access. As we mentioned, a big part of CARNIP is we want to make sure that the public knows. For any property owners who front along an arterial road, we want them to know about the future plans for access control or where driveways may be allowed and how many driveways may be allowed on arterial roads. That's a big part of this. It is not a construction document. There's no timeline for construction or improvements to these roads. It's just future designated types of arterial roads. So the history, there have been several updates. We do look at this annually as part of the comprehensive plan. There have been several updates over the years, and those are included on this updated history going back to 1999. And we look at this generally every year, but there's been updates about every 5 to 7 years. And the most recent update to the current map, as the current adopted map, was in 2015 for the policy area map, but then also looking at some frontage requirements in 2018 and 2019. So now in 2025, we're looking at the latest change for the current map. So the areas that were highlighted were really stemmed from a large change in the DeSoto area. Obviously, in the northwest part of the county, in the northwest area, this was an area which was mostly the former Sunflower Army ammunition plant. Majority of that, 9,000 acres, was annexed into the city of DeSoto. Because of that and the development of that area with the Astra Enterprise Park, that has spurred a lot of need for updates in that area especially. So that's a big part of the area, the focus that we're talking about is the northwest area, given all the recent construction. And we'll talk about some of these, the purpose is interconnecting some of the arterial roads, the east-west arterial roads that went through that area, as well as the north-south alignment in an area that was previously designated as a future corridor area to be determined. That's that area shaded in pink. So going through the CARNIP designations as part of the CARNIP update, we look at the different types of standards and the different types of arterial roads. There's types 1, 2, and 3. And these basically determine the types of requirements for access on an arterial road and the types of improvements or the future capacity of the different roads, the different types of arterial roads. There are different types. So basically, starting at type 1, these are the least restrictive, where there's not as much need to look at specific driveway spacing. There's generally lower traffic volumes and not as much need for the strict requirements. Type 2 gets in a little bit more higher capacity, more traffic anticipated. You might potentially get into either a 2-lane or a 4-lane future improvement, depending on capacity again. And then ultimately type 3, which is either a 2-lane or a 4-lane, again, depending on the capacity of traffic that is planned. So what's really important as part of this update is the requirements that'll be corresponding in our zoning regulations. We have driveway spacing requirements that correspond to the different arterial types. So as you go from the type 1 to type 3, the driveway spacing requirements get greater or they're stricter. So the driveway spacing should be further apart. And we have specific distances that are required. As you get to a type 3, there should be less access. Because of higher traffic volumes, we need to restrict that and to minimize any conflicts for traffic or hazards. So the CARNIP map overview, this just shows that current CARNIP map with some of the recommendations that we're going to be talking about changes this evening. So the main emphasis of this, as we talked about initially, was looking at the north-south connections through the former Sunflower Army Ammunition Plant area, now the Astra Enterprise Park. This area was previously designated as an area to be determined or a corridor study to be determined later. That's a part of this update. That's an area of emphasis we looked at. There are also some of the east-west connectors through this area, including 127th Street and 135th Street. Again, these were areas that were previously in the Sunflower Army Ammunition Plant. There was no plan for, at the time, no plan for east-west connections. Now there will be with the future development in DeSoto. We need to study that. Then there's also the north-south corridor for the Evening Star or Edgerton Road alignment from K10 to 159th Street. That is designated and recommended as a type 3 4-lane road. We also looked at Kill Creek Road alignment. That is the current alignment as Kill Creek is will continue, but there was a part of the current CARNIP plan, a area that was designated for a north-south, an alignment of a north-south road just to the west of the existing Kill Creek Road. Staff is recommending deleting that plan for realigning that north-south road and just keeping the existing Kill Creek Road and the 115th Street and Waverly Road alignment as a type 2 2-lane. There just was no need for realigning that Kill Creek Road based on our recommendations from the Transportation Connection Plan. We also looked at 111th Street, affirming that corridor. There was a plan for the east-west alignment, the corridor to continue through the Astra Enterprise Park, but we did recommend a lower designation from a type 2 2-lane to a type 2, we affirmed that lower designation to a type 2 2-lane. It was currently a type 2 4-lane, but still maintaining that alignment of 111th Street. We also looked at the surrounding areas, Four Corners Road from 143rd Street to 151st Street being a type 2 2-lane road, Moonlight Road from 135th Street to 175th Street being a type 2 4-lane road, 143rd Street from County Line Road to Edgerton Road, type 2 2-lane, 143rd Street, Edgerton Road to Four Corners Road, type 2 4-lane, 143rd Street, Four Corners Road to Olathe City Limits being a type 2 2-lane road, Dilley Road from 143rd Street to 159th Street, type 1 2-lane road, and 151st Street being from Dilley to Four Corners Road, a type 1 2-lane road. Those are the primary updates we're talking about for the CARNIP map. This is the existing CARNIP map that was adopted in 2015, showing again all of the arterial roads in the unincorporated area being a type 1, type 2, or type 3 road. Just for context, just to show the current plan. And here is the proposed map that shows that reflects all of those changes we talked about previously from the transportation connection plan, all of the different arterial roads I mentioned with north-south alignment and east-west alignments. And this just, again, shows the different designations. Type 1 are a gray roads, the smaller weight. Type 2 is a purple road. There's either the type 2 2-lane or type 2 4-lane. And then the type 3 are the green roads designated as either type 2 2-lane or type 3 2-lane or type 3 4-lane. With that, I will turn it over to Karen Miller to talk about the policy area map updates and housing types. And again, staff will be available for questions.
All right, thank you. Karen Miller with the Planning Department. So Sean went over the amendments to Chapter 4 of the Comprehensive Plan. Chapter 4 is the transportation section of the comp plan. Now, I'm going to talk about amendments to Chapter 2 of the Comprehensive Plan. And Chapter 2 is titled the Land Use Plan. And so things that I'm going to be talking about are land uses. So the first thing we'll look at is this amended policy area map. And so this policy area map is a type of future land use map. And we superimpose the CARNIP routes, the CARNIP roads over this policy area map just to make this map more useful and understandable. So we are changing the map, but we are not changing any of the policy areas. Those remain the same. And so any kind of updates to CARNIP will superimpose over this policy area map. Then the second change that we're proposing is amendments to the Chapter 2 regarding housing types in unincorporated Johnson County. And so generally right now, housing types within unincorporated Johnson County are generally limited to either single-family homes on at least 10-acre lots in the rural areas or single-family homes on at least 2-acre lots within residential areas in the county. There's exceptions to this, but primarily that's what we see. And this is primarily because of limited availability of infrastructure. And primarily that's because of lack of sewers, because our environmental sanitary code requires at least 2 acres for a septic system. And so this amendment proposes guidelines for allowing more variety of housing types within unincorporated Johnson County, with an emphasis that the appropriate locations for these different housing types would generally be within the urban policy area. Those are the urban fringes along the cities, that these different housing types would be compatible with nearby city plans, and then also served with adequate infrastructure for that particular use, and primarily regarding sewers, water, and roads. Then also, lastly, there's a section added to the comprehensive plan regarding accessory dwelling units. Currently, the accessory dwelling unit regulations in the zoning regulations. So I'm switching from comp plan to zoning regulations. So we have regulations regarding accessory dwelling units. Those regulations have a purpose and intent statement, and that is more of a policy kind of thing. So we're recommending not to change the policy regarding accessory dwelling units, but just to simply remove all of that policy information over to the land use chapter of the comprehensive plan. So again, no kind of policy change with that. So to summarize, there's three proposed amendments to Chapter 2, the Land Use Plan. The first is an updated policy area map reflecting the proposed CARNET changes. The second would be proposing guidelines regarding housing options. And the third is moving the accessory dwelling unit policy, but not the regulations from the zoning regulations to the comprehensive plan. And with that, I'll turn it over to Jay. Thank you.
Thank you. Once again, Jay Leipzig, the Planning Department. Just a quick summarize the next steps. As we mentioned earlier this evening is a public hearing on this item to consider amendments to the Comprehensive Arterial Road Network Plan and also considering housing types in our comprehensive plan. These comments will be brought forward to the BOCC. We tentatively have a date scheduled for October 23rd for that presentation. Next, that concludes the staff presentation. So we'll open it up for questions from the Planning Commission. Then we will open the public hearing for public comment.
Yeah, this is Lindsay Garsay. I was curious for Mr. Penley or for any of the staff at the county, what goes into the decision? I heard several times there was kind of statement, okay, the planning staff decided that we could just do a type 1 road here or a 2-lane versus a 4-lane. I guess I was kind of curious what kind of factors would weigh into your decision to recommend one versus the other?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. This is Sean Penley, County Planning Staff. That's a great question. I will defer to Public Works with the specifics, but majority of this recommendations do come, staff's recommending updates to CARNET, but they are following the recommendations from the Transportation Connection Plan. But maybe Jeffrey Vose might answer better as to how we arrived at the specific types of arterial road designations.
Jeff Vose with Public Works. Yeah, it was a comprehensive study based on KDOT's study that they did for the K10 corridor that covered all the way from I-35 down by Spring Hill all the way up to I-70. It looked at all the planning documents from all the jurisdictions. It looked at floodplains, wetlands, parks, other environmental features, sewerability. It was an overall prediction of where they thought that the development was going to go, and then what traffic gets generated from that and where it's trying to go. So based on those predicted traffic volumes, that's what leads you to decide which road and which type you have.
Just as a follow-up, it seemed like, and maybe I was misreading or mishearing some of the presentation, but if let's say you have a close call, let's say you have a road where it's, I'm sure a lot of the comments we're going to hear tonight maybe have concerns about, oh, okay, is this a 4-lane road or a 2-lane road? I guess I was just kind of curious what thought process or factors would make you weigh in on, okay, maybe we'll make this a 2-lane road versus a 4-lane road if you're kind of in a close call situation?
It would be fairly clear that you would need the 4-lane versus the 2-lane. So the Edgerton road alignment and Moonlight road alignment were very clear. That's where people would be traveling south, north and south through that corridor. So that was the overall factor, as I don't think there was much anything that really would lead us to want to pick a different one.
With the,
Excuse
go ahead.
me, with Sean Penley, Planning Staff, to also clarify too, I think part of that, the deciding factor was based on traffic volumes, anticipated future
Right,
traffic
yeah.
volume.
All
So
based on traffic.
That's what it makes that decision, is based on the expected traffic volumes based on the study.
I apologize, one other quick follow-up. It sounded like from your presentation that there was a decision to leave Kill Creek kind of as is, it sounded like. And I guess I was kind of curious, so what would make you decide to leave that as is versus change that Kill Creek?
So it was a little mistaken in how that was presented. The Northwest Corridor was a new road. Hill Creek was always going to stay.
Okay,
So this was not to replace Kill Creek. This was an additional road that was anticipated, but the traffic volumes did not show it being necessary. And that's why we are eliminating that route from the plan.
okay.
So that was also based on traffic volumes or the lack thereof.
hmm So the study that you saw showed that the volumes would not require an additional
Correct.
road. And so the current configuration of Kill Creek was sufficient to handle the anticipated future traffic volume?
Correct.
Okay. Did anybody else have any questions? Sure.
Commissioner Paderas, I have several questions for planning staff regarding this. First, I wanted to clarify, Carnap was adopted in 1999. Is that the point at which Edgerton Road, which I'm sure most of these folks are here to talk about, was designated the type 3 4-lane?
Sean Penley, planning staff, that's a good question. I don't know in the 1999 original Carnap plan what the designation was for Edgerton Road, but I do know that the current adopted Carnap plan shows the majority of Edgerton Road as type 3. The only area that was not designated specifically was that area between 143rd and 159th because it was in an area to be determined because of the Astron or the Sunflower Army ammunition plan, not knowing what the plan was for that. But the current adopted Carnap map does show Edgerton Road as a type 3. So there's no change for the majority of that.
Okay, so currently the adopted plan from 159th south to 215th is a type 3 4-lane.
That is correct.
Okay. And I know that it was established previously at our last meeting that any existing driveway access would be grandfathered in. What about dwellings and structures? Because I mean, I know a lot of these folks probably have their houses fairly close and if not within the right of ways that's being suggested here.
Yeah, there's no alignment set at this point, so that's something that really can't even answer. The road doesn't necessarily need to stay exactly where it is. If they're, depending on what the conditions are at the time, that road can be varied where it's going, so it can be moved a little bit
You can
to
draw.
avoid, yeah, we certainly would not intentionally try to take somebody's house or anything like that if there was a way to avoid it. So that it's just too early. We don't know what, this could be 30 years from now. We don't know what the design criteria would be. We don't know what the budget would be. Those things make a big difference as to what that final road would look like.
Yeah, and I understand that we also previously had established last month that there was a 25-year plan that you guys had looked at, a 25-year study, I guess is the term, and that nothing within the next 5 to 10 years, but that you had also said that things were moving slower than what the study might suggest.
They have been,
Sure.
yes, but it's all subject to change.
Right, it's all subject to change and there's no guarantees. I
It is
understand
Johnson
that.
County.
And I know we also had previously talked about shifting this arterial road a mile one way or the other and the additional costs that would be involved in that. I was reading through some of the public comments that had been submitted via email, and there was an interesting suggestion about why not use, I guess the first question is there a road existing on the western boundary of the county that goes north-south already?
You mean County Line Road?
Yeah, I mean, so
There is
there
County Line
there
Road.
is a road there, so would that be a good candidate for a major artery that might be an alternative to disrupting all, because there's more than just the rural houses along it.
Right.
There's actually city houses there too.
And there's also along County Line Road as well.
Yeah, I don't know anything about County Line
So,
Road, so I was just
I
asking
mean-
if that had been looked at as well.
It was included in the study area. It was modeled. It did not get enough traffic to change its designation.
Okay. I think that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Craig Connell, I have some questions as well. Just follow up to that point. I live up close to the County Line Road, and from about 119th up to K10, it's Captain's Creek. It's just, there's no road there for about 2 miles because it's all low flooding land. The point of even having a connector up to K10 there, that's my question. Is the KDOT's intent to connect that all the way up to I-70 someday from that spot?
So out of the K-10 study, KDOT did not give an alignment for a north-south corridor. So at this point, KDOT has determined that there's not enough traffic to warrant such a corridor anytime soon. So that would be a City of DeSoto corridor going in, under DeSoto's control, going through the Sunflower Ammunition Plant.
Okay, but I guess I'm questioning, is the traffic just to get out of, instead of going to I-35, going to go up to K-10? To go west to I-70 or something?
So are you talking about, so we're looking at traffic coming, not necessarily from I-35, but we're looking at traffic coming in and out of Edgerton and Gardner area. Whether that's traffic getting off of I-35 there and traveling on the local roads to get up. Typically, from what we've seen, we don't get a lot of that traffic. We did a study between 69 Highway and 169, and in a week, we had 3 trucks that were cutting through there rather than going around on the interstate network. So we don't really see a lot of that kind of traffic. I think most people would stay on I-35 and then over on 435. So I don't see that. That's not really a bunch of that traffic. Really, the majority of the traffic, at least initially, is going to be coming off of K10, going to the Astor Park, and then back out again on K10. I don't know when that corridor through the Astor Park would actually be needed. That would be something that DeSoto would determine as they build that out. It's all going to be development driven.
Sure.
The reason why the Astor Park is so liked by the people that are going in there to build is because the access to K10, there's 3 interchanges in a 2-mile area there. And that's very hard to find apparently. So that's really the impetus for that growth there. I really don't know how soon it would be where people would be wanting to go south from there.
Right. And I guess one last question on that is, did KDOT look at taking 199th Street just straight west to Highway 59 out of Lawrence? Because that takes you to I-35, it takes you to K-10, which takes you to I-70. If this idea is to get the trucks off of all these side streets and get them to the main arteries, I would think that would be a primary. It's already got it right away. I mean, it'd be easy to.
KDOT may have looked at that in their 5-county study a long time ago, but that would have been out of the region that was studied for this update.
Okay, I guess that's a
So
question.
I
Question for
can't
KDOT,
really answer
rather than you. Yeah.
what KDOT looked at, but we did not look at that for this study.
Yeah, I'm just questioning the need for this north-south.
It's one of the,
Anyway.
So once again, this is an anticipated plan of what we think development is going to drive. We're not going to build it if it's not needed. So if the development doesn't come, we're not going to build it.
Yep, understood. Thanks.
Commissioner Padilla, is what I'm understanding then, are you saying that if no one sells their land to a developer and no one then develops it, then there's not going to be any road expansion?
Correct. This is truly development driven, traffic driven. I would anticipate when we would go to 4-lane one of these roads, if we ever did, it would be because there's a massive amount of traffic out there and it's approaching the capacity of that 2-lane road.
Okay.
So I don't foresee that we're going to be building it ahead of time.
Okay, so for this expansion to occur, you've got to have developers that have already stated their intent to put something in. And to do that, they've got to already have control of the land and et cetera, et
Correct.
cetera.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So Commissioner Oric, so to pick up on that, this road network that we're envisioning is to capture traffic created by growth within the area, not to move traffic through the area. Is that a
Correct.
good way to think of it?
Yes. Yes. So, yeah, I mean, there's going to be somewhat of a synergy between the logistics park down in Edgerton and needing access to K10. So there's going to be synergies that are created by these island type developments that are occurring. So DeSoto is a brand new development. For years, the county grew concentric circles. So it was very predictable how it's growing. Now we have an island annexation down in the southeast corner with Overland Park. And then we have the logistics park, KC going in Gardner Edgerton area. And now we have Panasonic going in up at Astor Enterprise Park. So all of a sudden that's creating a need for people to get across through the unincorporated roads. So it's kind of a unique situation. We're trying to predict what that development is going to look like and have just a plan in place to be able to provide for that capacity if and when it's needed.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I have a question. I got the impression, excuse me, that in forward planning, that we had looked ahead and like if it's a 2-lane road, maybe gotten the right of way to someday make it a 4-lane road. Did I misunderstand that? Because you're talking about moving a road around because right of ways not always available.
I think planning gets some of that right away as things are platted in anticipation for that, but we don't proactively go out and purchase right away to match that CARNEP designation. In fact, on our current safety improvement projects that we're doing on arterial roads, we are only buying the right of way necessary to build that improvement. So,
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. Sean Penley, County Planning Staff. That's correct. Right-of-way acquisition usually on arterial roads is only designated or dedicated at the time of platting. So usually the only thing that's going to drive right-of-way acquisition for any additional right-of-way on arterial roads is if a property is platted and warranted. So if that right-of-way is warranted for any roadway improvements. We do have some plat applications depending on if there's maybe a new residential subdivision, maybe there's a new 2 or 3 acre lot subdivision. There have been a couple of occasions recently where we've had some new residential plats that might warrant some additional right-of-way. Not every plat warrants additional right-of-way. If you've got a simple 2-lot plat, maybe it's, and the spacing is great enough on the lots, the frontage, it's not warranted, it's not needed. But if it meets that criteria in our zoning regulations, if based on the volumes and the type of plat and the types of frontage and the number of lots, that might trigger a right-of-way dedication for that plat. So if a property is developing, it might warrant it. But otherwise, we don't go out and acquire right-of-way unless there's a need for an actual improvement, for a bridge improvement or road improvement.
Thank you. I think I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Fred Starrett.
Thanks.
Commissioner Gersay, I have a couple quick follow-ups. So the criteria that was kind of underlying the decision to make any updates, it sounds like it was based on this traffic study that the county hired, correct?
yeah, County, KDOT, and DeSoto
And when was that study completed?
earlier this year.
And it sounded like, based on prior meetings, that perhaps the as predicted traffic flow isn't accelerating, pun intended, as quickly as they had anticipated? Or would you disagree with that?
Characterize it that way. It's too early to really tell. I mean, the model doesn't take into an incremental growth. It just looks at the ultimate and then what traffic comes out of that. So it's really hard to say. I would hate to characterize it that way. I think it's too early to begin to say that.
And the reason I asked the question is, it sounds like this CARNEP plan gets looked at every 5 years. And so there is a bit of, I think with any of the updates of it, a little bit of looking into the future. And I was just curious if we had seen any indications that the model underlying the decisions to, adjust the road, if the model wasn't trending toward accuracy, if there may be a decision to hold back on some of the changes of designation and wait for the next 5-year update, especially if a lot of these items may not get built within the 5 years or 10-year plan. I was just curious how do you weigh that decision of, do we rely solely on this model, or do we see if the model's trending accurately and then adjust our decisions?
So the intent of this is really to protect that capacity of the roads. It's not intended to say what road we're going to build.
Sure.
So it's intended that access control, that diagram that Sean showed with the big arrow on it, that's really the purpose, is just to make sure that that capacity can be achieved if it's needed. So waiting to try to preserve that doesn't make a lot of sense in that regard, because 5 years from now, if you get 30 houses built along a stretch of road with driveways, you've lost that opportunity to have that capability.
For the people in the room and for the commissioners, I'm curious what the next process looks like. I think it was helpful for me to hear that the Carnot plan isn't a construction plan. So even if every one of these designations was there, in 5 years, everything could be exactly status quo if there's not any changes to traffic. So I guess for the people in the room and for the commissioners, what would be the next steps if there was a decision to maybe enact or to do a road improvement project based on the traffic loading that you're seeing, and there's a funding mechanism for that particular improvement? How would the people in the room know, and what would that look like? I guess I'm just kind of curious about the process.
Yeah, well, there isn't, at this point, there is not a funding mechanism for capacity
sure.
improvements. I've been with the county for 17 years. We have not done a capacity improvement project to date. We are focused solely on safety improvement projects and bridge repairs, and keeping the bridges up has been our focus. So, so the funding mechanism would have to be identified. The traffic would basically have to get to the point where the road isn't really working. So we would have to identify a section of road that was at capacity, was having trouble with people being able to get across the cross streets, people having trouble getting in and out of entrances, backups at stop signs, severe backups, those kinds of things, before we would consider looking at doing those type of expansions.
Right. And so if all of those things happened and then there was a decision and the unlikely funding mechanisms that you describe, what would that look like then? Would there be another hearing or a proposed plan, or would the project just go forth consistent with the Carnot plan?
It would probably go through the county's CIP program, the overall county, as part of the county budget for a coming year, would be the mechanism that I know of now to be able to do that type of improvement. So it would be in the budgeting process. It would take 3 to 5 years to go through plan development, right-of-way acquisition, all those kinds of things in order to be able to build a roads like that.
Madam Chair, Jay Leipzig, I was just going to add that any improvements would be developer driven. So pending any large application where there's a public improvement, as Jeff said, it would be part of our CIP process, but all other applications would be development driven. So in other words, through the application process for platting and development plans as those come forward. The other piece of that is Carnot and our comprehensive plan is reviewed annually by the Planning Commission. And part of that review is looking at Carnot and making sure it's consistent. And oftentimes we look at land use, we look at the Carnot anticipated roadways, and all of that is included in that annual review. So it is, if something should change dramatically, as an extreme example, frankly, with Panasonic, for example, is something that just completely changed all of the premises or the parameters we have. And that would be kind of an extreme example of something that's a public improvement that completely changed the overall landscape.
Commissioner Grisey, so I think all of the commissioners share with me a desire to make sure that the public has a chance to have a voice. And I think that some of the frustrations in the past with roadway changes have felt like they've been sprung on the residents, where all of a sudden they show up one day and there's a construction project and they have no way to plan or anticipate or even voice, hey, could you do this instead of this? Or has this been considered instead of this? And so I guess I'm kind of curious, is this the only mechanism for them to do that? Or once there would be a particular application or a particular project, would they get some sort of advance notice and an ability to weigh in and plan? Or is this kind of it? And then they just show up one day with cones in their front yard? I'm just trying to understand, because I think that's been the frustration of a lot of the public on some of these projects. And I just want them to be aware, and for the commissioners to be aware, is this the only forum for being able to voice a concern? Or would there be a later opportunity on a specific project, on a specific road, that they could at least have prior knowledge and an ability to weigh in from the public?
Madam Chair, Sean Penley, County Planning. I can try to answer that. Yeah, that's a good question. You know, this is the long-range planning process we're looking at for Carnip. This is looking at future roadway improvements. If there's any current planning projects that are proposed, a land use application, let's say for a rezoning or a development plan, absolutely as part of that in the county, we do have a public notice requirement for any properties within 1,000 feet of a proposed rezoning, development plan, conditional use permit. Any properties within 1,000 feet do get notice of that. We don't have many of those in the county, though, that really would ever warrant any kind of real improvements, but we do occasionally get those, especially around New Century Air Center. What often drives a lot of the changes I think that we're seeing is usually it's city development, right? DeSoto, Edgerton, Spring Hill, Overland Park. There's a lot of those developments that do have regional impact and have larger impact in the surrounding area. Cities often, that's their jurisdiction. They have the process. The cities follow the same statutory requirements as the county does as far as notice. And generally, if there's a project that's on the fringe area, say it's on the city limits, and the surrounding area properties may be unincorporated, they usually notify the same area, 1,000 feet. In the city, they have a 200-foot notice requirement, but they'll notice the same area, 1,000 feet, for any land use changes, rezonings, development plans. But there's absolutely an opportunity for those types of public involvement on those specific projects as well. That's a good question that often comes up. That's not part of this. You know, there won't be any future notice with the comprehensive plan other than our general comprehensive plan annual update. We don't do notice like that because it affects the entire unincorporated area. But yeah, if there's any specific development project, there is that notice process as well.
Well, thank you for accepting our peppering of questions from the commissioners. Did you have a follow-up? Yes.
Yes, Commissioner Paderas, I just had a couple other questions. Jeff, you made a comment about if additional permits get granted and structures get built, you may lose an opportunity to do a road expansion. Does that mean that there's not a limitation currently on building permits with the Carnip, and or are people going to be limited on what they can do in anticipation of this potential expansion?
Right. So going from a type 1 to a type 3, for example, it would limit what the driveway spacing and the side road spacing that's going in there for new development. It would not, any existing driveways would still be grandfathered in, but the more you allow on a section of road, the less ultimate capacity it's going to have, because you're going to have people turning, those turning movements, slowing down traffic and those kinds of things.
Right, but like in this case, a lot of this is agricultural. So if somebody wants to put up an additional structure to support their agricultural business, permit would still be granted?
If it met once this gets approved, if it meets that proper spacing and the new type 3 Carnip spacing.
Sean Penley, planning staff, I can try to answer that. We look at the driveway entrance requirements for any new proposed driveway. As for each individual dwelling or accessory building, we look at that again on a case-by-case basis. Usually, if it's an existing lot, it's sort of there has to be a allowed access to a lot. Usually, if there's a new driveway, though, proposed, we'll have to look at that and see if it meets those Carnip type designations and the spacing requirements. We do have that adopted both, in the zoning and subdivision regulations, and we have our Carnip plan. So we're usually looking at that if somebody's wanting to build a new driveway. Existing driveways are grandfathered in; they're there and approved if they've got their entrance permit. But yeah, we would look at that on a case-by-case basis, just depending on what is proposed.
Okay, and next question, we talked about capacity of the road. Do we know how close to capacity Edgerton Road currently is?
It's not very, it doesn't have much traffic.
It's not even approaching
Relatively,
current capacity then?
no.
Okay. So we'd have to see some significant land acquisitions and developmental plans to warrant changing the road as it currently is. Okay, so a lot's gonna have to happen. And my last question was about notice. You said that 1,000 feet. I mean, when we're talking in these rural scales, you can end up being fairly close to something and not knowing about it, because 1,000 feet doesn't mean much.
Yeah, the Sean Penley planning staff, that's a state, that's a statute. You know, that's the notice requirement that's adopted by Kansas state statute. That's followed by all jurisdictions. I'm not aware of anybody that has a greater notice requirement. You know, there's other ways to get notice. They have signs posted on properties. There's information posted online. But yeah, we, as a county, as most other jurisdictions do, follow that 1,000-foot notice requirement. If there's anyone else is always welcome to attend any public meetings. But yeah, as far as the notice requirement, we just follow state statutes.
So it comes down to basically the residents being observant and communicating with each other to make sure they're not missing something.
Yeah, sure. And there's always that public input process. Again, anyone's always welcome to public meetings and looking online. But yeah, as far as, you know, what you'll usually notice is if it's a really big development, it's probably being annexed into a city. We don't get very many, at least in the unincorporated area. And there, you will probably know if a property's been annexed into a city. But if not, it's yeah, that's one of those things that just the public is, yeah, always should be kind of aware of any updates. But we're always happy to answer any questions as county staff.
The topic of notice is kind of close to home for me because I did not receive notice when something like this occurred at my previous residence until it was already happening. So
Notice for a development project or a public improvement or a street improvement?
both. The first I knew of the road expanding in front of my house was there were stakes in my yard. So, I mean,
Yeah, we certainly in the county, we follow public notice requirements. So if there's any zoning change or development plan proposal, we as county staff send out the notice to all properties within 1,000 feet. I certainly can't answer the questions about how other jurisdictions handle that, but certainly we would do that as any public process that we have in the county.
Commissioner, Jay Leipzig, one thing I was going to mention, we highly encourage applicants when they're doing a development plan to have a neighborhood meeting of some type. There's some things we require, special use permits, for example, for quarries, that type of thing, certain land uses. But Sean's saying we comply with the state law, but that's certainly a requirement that we have. But yeah, depending on the application, we highly encourage them to do that. And you know, that's one of the things we look at before we schedule a hearing with the zoning board, is to ensure there was what type of notification was completed and is the neighborhood aware. But it doesn't happen every time, but we do highly encourage that.
thank you.
Commissioner Gersay, one thing I'd say that I've kind of learned through this process is that I had previously thought that the public hearing, like today, was my only, as a resident of unincorporated Johnson County, my only ability to make my voice heard. And as the staff has reminded me many, many times, actually, the best way, in addition to tonight, is to just schedule meetings with these individuals here or any other people that you have questions with. The county, and you can sit down and not be limited to a 2-minute, and you can sit down and really have a very full-throated discussion and really get a lot of back and forth, give them a lot of information. And just so you know, the applicants for land use are doing just this. So as the public, if you're not doing that, you're kind of at a disadvantage, in my opinion. And so I would just encourage, that was something I didn't realize for a long time. I thought that public hearings were my only chance to make my voice heard, and it's one of many ways. And so, after today, to consider that, setting up meetings, they'll have conference calls, they'll have in-person meetings, sit down with you, walk through their thought process. You can have more of a back and forth, as opposed, public hearings have to, for time period, sakes, have to kind of have a regimented order, but those meetings can be a lot more fluid and I think a lot more helpful for getting your voice across and getting information back. But as I don't want to rush any of my commissioners, did anybody else have any other questions? Okay, well, speaking of those public comments, I think it's time to do that. So I think if everybody will humor me, I think what I'll do is I'll call the first individual who's in person, who's on the list, and then I'll say the name of the person who's on deck so that you can kind of be ready. You'll see there's a clock just to try to keep this somewhat orderly. Feel free to come up when you hear your name, come up to the mic, say your name, first and last name, and kind of whereabouts you live so we can kind of get a sense. One thing to remember is some of the commissioners are very familiar with your part of neck of the woods, right? So they'll understand the roads and everything. You may see some of us who are not as familiar with the particular road names looking at a map. It's not at all because we're not listening. I think we're just trying to track which particular areas you're referencing. And we appreciate you being here. And so I think we'll start. Okay. Is it? Okay, what do you think that is? Hayden, last name? Calvin. Is it Calvin? Okay, sorry. And then,
My name's Calvin Hayden. I live at 14453 Edgerton Road. 2 minutes for as much as I pay for taxes is a load of crap. I like to tell you that I've sat on the zoning boards in this county for over 18 years. I worked for the county for 40 years. I've sat in those chairs. I was a county commissioner. I've been on the fire board. I've been on every water board. I have dedicated my life to making sure that the citizens of Johnson County are safe. I'm a former sheriff. I don't come at this lightly, but this defies common sense. Even looking at this defies common sense. If you look at, here Jeff over here is talking about, well, we'll limit the driveways. There are over 80 driveways on Edgerton Road between 143rd and Edgerton. 80 driveways. The houses, they'll have to purchase 20 houses to get 100 feet of right-of-way. I'm not talking just property. I'm talking houses, residences, because they're too close to the road. Now, we've got roads. You've got Sunflower Road that goes all the way to the Kaw River that they have right-of-way for, and nobody looks at it. There's maybe 10 houses on the entire road between 151st and Edgerton. But due to the lack of caring about impacting the residents of rural Johnson County, they don't care. Yeah, County Line Road goes up. You'll have to cross Captain Creek one time because you want to get over to Evening Star. That's where they want to run it up through to get on K10. They've already got their exit there. This is ridiculous, and it's asinine. It shouldn't be allowed to take place. And I am going to tell you, I'm working for these guys for 40 years, they do not send out notices. You know it firsthand. You see it when the little lights go up, or the flags go up. The second thing is, hey, Jeff, where's this study that you did with KDOT? How come that hadn't been released to the public? Well, the study you did just this year with KDOT and you and DeSoto, how has it not been released to the public? How about that? Okay, so don't be talking out of both sides of your
Chairman,
mouth.
can I ask how we're enforcing our 2-minute rule?
yeah,
Because we've lost control already.
No, you haven't. I paid for this microphone. I'm going to keep it.
so
Well,
here's what I would recommend is as a chair, thank you for bringing this up. As a chairperson, I'm trying to be respectful, not cut people off in the middle of their sentence. I understand, I can hear that you're frustrated. I would appreciate respectful dialogue with the members of the commission and the staff. And certainly you can expect that in return. And if you don't get that, I'd like to know. I think your time is up. Do you have one last sentence you would like to summarize your thoughts?
The truth is, we don't have any representation in rural Johnson County sitting on the Board of County Commissioners right now. None. You're it. You need to stand up and tell them this is not acceptable and to
Thank
come
you.
up with a better plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hayden. Okay, we have John and Debbie Tana. So we'll start with John and then Debbie, you can be on deck.
My name is John Tan. I live at 31555 West 111th Street. And I guess that I don't want to, I don't have much of a comment except a question. You know, I've lived in this area for 30 plus years, and I've seen traffic increase. Absolutely on K10. If K10 gets blocked, which it does, they shut it down, unfortunately, for some really bad accidents. There is no way to get to town unless you go to 83rd or even way far south. So we don't have any alternative when it comes to that. Since the Sunflower development has started, and we all knew it was coming, and we know it's going to come even more. We have traffic going down Kill Creek Road, which I live just 800 feet off of, that is big, large truck traffic. That how are they going to get from Edgerton to K10? And that's a pretty short distance, but they come right down Kill Creek. Has anything been addressed with that? You know, I guess the other thing, I went to the meeting, I think I went to the meeting in 1999 that was held in DeSoto with the CARNP, and I'd like to know really what has been done with all the things that they said they were going to get done. I live on 111th Street, and they said in 20 years, which would have been 2 or 3 years ago, that street would be put through. Nothing's changed out there as far as that goes. So just some concerns that I have, and that we know change is coming. We know it's going to come. I'd like to have some anticipation rather than waiting on other people to tell us what needs to be done, to anticipate. Well, it's common sense. We're growing. We need some development in our roads.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes. And now Debbie Tan, sorry, I added an A to the end of your last name, Tana, so. Okay, thank you. Let me know if you change your mind. Chad Wilson, and then Judy Harlan would be on deck. Sorry if I mispronounced your name.
All right, I'm Chad Wilson. I live at 16240 Edgerton Road. I am also on the McCamish Township Board, so I do know that there are no elected officials who have been talked to about any development out our way, because I'm part of that government body out there. I disagree with Calvin on his 20 houses. I think we drove this, and I think there's about 34 or 35 that are going to have to be purchased when you look at 150 to 200 foot right away in a 4-lane road. There's about 60 to 80 houses in that stretch from 143rd from the munition plant to 56 Highway. You keep giving building permits to people that are building brand new houses out there, not having any idea this is on the horizon. I also, I'm concerned. We have a business, we have a farm out there and a business. We have people coming in to buy meat. We have Prairie Center Meats out there. You go to a 4-lane road, how are they going to access my business? First off, my house isn't going to be there. My business isn't going to be there. We do have room to build further back. I don't know that everybody here has that ability. I don't for a minute think you're going to zigzag that road and try to miss houses down there. That's just ludicrous. Really doesn't make any sense anyway, because there are houses on both sides of the road that are within that right of way. That is a pretty highly populated area, and you're also telling me now that you don't have enough traffic out there to even look at it. I did notice some strips were just put out there to start counting traffic within the last week, maybe. I've noticed them in a couple of different spots on 175th and on Edgerton Road. I'd be curious what that level needs to be to look at this and where we're at now. How far out are we? Because it kind of does seem like if we approve this plan, then it's approved. Then it's going forward at that point. Seems like there's not enough information. It's kind of an, oh shucks, just trust us. There's nothing going to happen for 50 years, 60 years. Well, how do we plan like that? We can't live that way. And we're one part of this. We're the Edgerton Road. There's a lot of Edgerton Road people here. This is happening all over the county. I'm wondering, how do people not know about this? Because this is a significant change to our area. I just kind of feel like we're maybe putting the cart before the horse a little bit here, saying, trust us, and we're going to treat you right.
Thank you, Chad. Appreciate it. Judy, are you next? Thank you. And then Shiloh Harlan would be after her.
I'm Judy Harlan. I'm just a retired resident that lives on Edgerton Road at 14820. And I guess I don't understand this big of a change happening at, like Chad said, approved today without knowing that there can't be any changes. If it's approved today, then what happens? If you didn't need that 4-lane road and it turns to a 2-lane, will you change then and do a 2-lane? Is that in the writing?
So, Madam Chairman, Sean Penley, planning staff, I just
Oh, hold on.
mentioned
I don't want to, you still have
Well,
15 seconds of time.
we'll get,
Oh, yeah.
staff is gathering any comments or questions and we can respond following the public hearing. I just want to let the public know we can respond to any specific questions following public hearing.
Okay. And about notifying people. I was told at the DeSoto meeting that they couldn't afford to send letters to people down Edgerton Road. That costs too much money. But we all get a tax bill every year through the mail. And we pay our taxes. That's just 2 concerns that I have.
Thank you so much for coming up and speaking. Shiloh, you're next. And then after Shiloh, Lisa Hart. Puppy, thank you. I appreciate it.
Hi, I'm Shiloh Harlan. I'm her daughter-in-law, and we bought the land at 14820 Edgerton Road in late 2017. At that point, we started making plans, and we finally are going to be moving into our new home in about a month. When I put the building permit in, there was nothing said that, or reminded, I guess we knew this was in La La Land somewhere, but there was nothing said, hey, this is coming. Maybe you want to reconsider. Maybe you should think about this. No. A month after we dig our hole and have concrete, there's this DeSoto meeting that we find out the day before that there's this meeting in DeSoto. The information coming from, there's a breakdown of information getting to us. I asked Judy an hour before this meeting, and she was like, I didn't even know there was one. And she'd been at other meetings. So I don't know how these notices are being sent. Some things I noticed during your presentation, it looks like we're taking Edgerton Road from the least restrictive kind of road to the most restrictive kind of road. I feel like there might be some steps in between there that we could commonly agree on. It also seems like we already have too many driveways to meet your requirements of this divided highway. I know just in our little spot, there's in that one from 143rd to 159th, or 151st, just thinking there's like 6 right in a row there. And then 2 across the street. Like, it just doesn't even make sense that this divided highway would go there and limit the access to the homes that we have. You have people with businesses, you have people with homes, you have people with farms, you have people with cattle. You push all those people out, they're feeding people. Not only their own family, they're feeding our county. People go to their store to buy food. And we're going to, their house is right on the road. There's got to be a better way. You've got 59 right over there. You've got 10. There's other roads. You look at Evening Star, you look at Sunflower, where there's County Line Road, where there's just not the population that we have. I have lots of other thoughts, but my time is up. My last question is just, I hear this is development driven. I'm hearing you say development driven. None of us here are planning on developing anything big. So I don't know, I don't even understand the purpose for this. Development driven, coming from Panasonic, coming from that little spot on 56 Highway and 151st, that little warehouse thing, coming from the intermodal. Those are your developments that it's driven by.
Thank you so much. I don't want to cut you off, but thank you so much for speaking, Shiloh. Lisa Huppy. And then the last person I have on my list, Dawn and Nancy Lasholer. Is it, if I said that correctly? Thank you.
Hi, I'm Lisa Huppy. My husband and I live on the southeast corner of 175th and Edgerton Road. We will be gone if you do this. I mean, gone. There's no other way about it. We're just rural people who like rural life. Rural Johnson County is beautiful and we enjoy it and we want to continue enjoying it. What you're doing here is going to destroy homes, displace families for really no apparent reason. It's been said over and over and over again that the studies show there is no reason. So we respectfully ask you to remove this from the Carnot plan. It doesn't have a place there. You've said it over and over again. With all the driveways that are already there, think of the safety issues that you are creating, how dangerous this highway, 55 miles an hour, going by our homes is going to be, getting in and out of our driveways. I mean, that is really frightening for me to have my family come and visit and have the big family events that we have at our home. I have 70 people come to Christmas and Easter and Thanksgiving. How are they, that's just is a danger for everybody. So think of safety. Think of safety. This isn't safe. The comprehensive plan promises to uphold the integrity of rural living. And this goes against holding up the integrity of rural life in Johnson County. It sounds like this is for the Astor Park and connecting them to the intermodal, and that's a really sad reason. There's so many other routes that they can take. I just want to know who the commission is really working for, who the staff is working for, and how these plans are taken, how these are made. There's a friend of ours that actually built a home on Edgerton Road, asked if there were any plans for widening the road, and they were told no. Our home is maybe 200 feet off of Edgerton Road and probably the equal distance off of 175th. So you are going to be drastically and gravely affecting over 34 families that are in the same position as we are and devastating the rural life of other people. This is our home. This isn't about roads. This isn't about, what you see in a study that doesn't really exist. This is about homes. This is about people who live here. We've lived here since 1993. So we respectfully ask that you remove this plan from your Carnot plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Dawn or Nancy, which one would like to go first?
Dawn, please.
Oh, okay. Well, then Nancy it is.
Okay, Nancy Flaspohler. I live on 111th in the unincorporated, just west of Kill Creek. Okay, the west side of 111th is 1 mile. The east side is also 1 mile. And on our side, there are only 9 houses. It's a dead-end road and it's a chip seal road. So according to your triggers, that should not have been designated as a type 2 road right now. It's a type 1 right now. And then all of a sudden it's just arbitrarily listed as type 2, which would make it 50 miles an hour. And it's a dead-end road. It's a horse trail down to Kill Creek Park. And I think that they just made a mistake saying that should be a type 2 road because it's not going to go anywhere. It's just going to still end up where it is, 1 mile down and maybe a little farther east because you have some dotted lines there. But both of the roads only have a few houses on them because it's 10-acre limits. So I want to know why it was upgraded to type 2 to begin with. The trigger is supposed to be 1,500 cars average daily traffic to make it a type 2, and there are probably maybe 50 right now, nowhere near 1,500. I mean, that's ridiculous. It's a dead-end road with 7 houses or 8 houses. And then also, this is so confusing. The map that has all those red lines and all the different lines, not the one on the last page. The last page is what you're going to do for now. Is that correct? That's what you're voting on, is on the last page. But that one that's way up there, several pages up, that was the old one from 2002, why has that still not been changed with all these changes that, things are getting thrown out, the Kill Creek is thrown out, So I feel like that needs to be updated, or otherwise people can't make plans because those are still big red lines on a map that don't make any sense. And also, since our road heads into Kill Creek Park, there'd be no way to get to the development out there west, not the quarry, but the, Panasonic, because you would have to go down such steep slopes, which is, I think, is probably why it got taken off, because originally they said it was going to go to that plant.
Thank you, Nancy. Oh, I didn't mean to cut you off. Thank you so much. I appreciate.
Yeah, I think that's all we were going to say is we would just like to have that type 2 designation removed, because it's not a type 2 road and it was a type 1 and it has not triggered. So I don't think it's right.
Thank you, Nancy. Were there any individuals online that wanted to speak tonight? Okay. Is there anybody in the audience that didn't sign up that would like to? Yes, come to the podium.
Okay. You in time? My name is Jennifer Williams, and I want to give a different perspective. So I actually live south of 199th Street. And so where you see that 199th right now is a 4-lane road, that's in the city limits of Gardner. We fought for years to have the county stop the inappropriate truck traffic that was cutting through those roads. It was very dangerous for all of our residents and our teenagers and everyone driving on those narrow roads. And our resistance we kept getting from the county commissioners repeatedly was that's in the Carnot plan as a 4-lane future road, so we can't stop the truck traffic. And so eventually Gardner annexed that into the city limits of Gardner. And I did speak with the city administrator today. They have no intentions of that being a 4-lane road, even though it's still listed on the county map that way and needs to be removed. And so it will never be a cut through for trucks because it's growing residential and we don't want them skipping the scales to get over in the way station and stuff to get from 169 over to I-35 across to the intermodal. And so all of that to say from experience, unfortunately, because of all this we've been dealing with from the intermodal growth, we've had to deal with government speak a lot. So yes, we did get the opportunity to go speak with planning and zoning and roads and bridges, but they are working for the bigger plan with the cities and they don't listen to the people. And so if it wasn't for the city of Gardner annexing some people and doing what was right for the citizens, we never would have been protected. And I say all this to protect my friends and other rural residents that deserve better treatment than what we got. Once you make that a 4-lane road on the Carnot plan, then everything they're going to hear from here on out, even if they don't have the funds to finish that road, is we can't stop the truck traffic coming out of the intermodal, even if it's dangerous, even if there's problems. It's going to be future 4-lane. This is the way it's going to be. And so it's going to force something on the residents from the big developments without taking into consideration how it is affecting the people who actually paid to be there. So thank you for your time.
Thank you for speaking. Was there anybody else that has not had a chance to speak? Sure, come on up.
Thank you. I'm Karen Sirkovich, and I live at 32104 West 111th Street, which is approximately Kill Creek Road and 111th. You've heard from many of us who live in rural Johnson County. We moved to rural Johnson County. We bought property out there for a reason, because we wanted the rural lifestyle. Some of the speakers tonight have brought up great points that making, for instance, Edgerton Road a 4-lane road would destroy the idea of living in rural Johnson County. Again, my neighbor Nancy Flasspour pointed out the road that we live on, which is west of Kill Creek Road, our residents, the 6 of us at the time, paid to have that chip and sealed. It's only chip and sealed because we all chipped in and paid for that. It's a dead-end road. It should be designated a type 1. I don't know why it was ever designated type 4. I appreciate that it's moving downgraded to type 2, but frankly speaking, it is a dead-end road to the park. Lastly, something that nobody has brought up tonight, which I have grave concerns about, are not only on the transportation plan, but also on the development plan. The idea of changing the housing designations in rural areas, in rural fringe areas to, and I quote, varying density and housing types, opens up a huge Pandora's box for developers to potentially come in, build duplexes, build apartment complexes in rural fringe areas. And that is not what rural fringe is intended for. I understand it's a hot button at the county commission to talk about how we have a housing problem, but land grabbing in Johnson County unincorporated is not the answer. Thank you.
Thank you for speaking. Were there any other individuals that would like to speak at public comment? Yes, come on up. You're Debbie Tan? Okay.
I live at 31555 West 111th Street with Mr. Tan. And I want to say, first of all, I appreciate, Madam Chair, your giving us information on how to get information and how to, I didn't know that. I wish I had that understanding because, you know, we are seeing an increase in traffic on Kill Creek. It is there. We hear it, we see it. I have elderly neighbors whose houses border Kill Creek, and they actually sit out and count the number now, the changes in trucks that are going by. So the changes are there. You're right, change is coming. For me as a citizen, you know, we try to be involved in positive ways. So when we don't receive information, it's very difficult. And I think it would be helpful if we had some way to get that information that we know about. I found out about this meeting about 2 hours before it happened because a friend who received an email from a friend who subscribed to something and posted it on Facebook. So we dropped our plans for this evening and came. And I, you know, it's not that I expect a personal invitation, but I truly don't know where to receive that information. So last week, our section of 111th started being treated. We have no idea why. So that's been the topic of the neighborhood. What's going on? What are we doing? And we were told, one of the neighbors was told by one of the workers, well, we're going to be rerouting traffic here, and it's going to be a lot of traffic. And, you know, without that information, you know, we don't know what to expect and what is coming. So I would just encourage you to remember that we care, we want to be involved, we want to know what's happening, and we just want to know where. I mean, you know, a letter would be nice, but I mean, I can, if I know where to look for what's posted, we can find the information. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Tan. What I would propose is we take maybe a quick 5-minute break, and then the commissioners can ask follow-up questions based on the questions that were received and concerns that were received. In addition, the staff could respond to direct questions that they were asked by the public. Would that be okay? Okay, why don't we adjourn for a quick 5-minute break, and then we'll get back to things. All right. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for allowing a brief interlude to kind of collect our thoughts and use the restroom. I appreciate that. Lindsay Grisay here, Chairman of the Planning Commission. I just wanted to say, before I turn it over to planning staff to answer some direct questions that they received, that we understand. I do a lot of public speaking, and I'm nervous every time I step to a podium. So I can only imagine for people who don't do it very frequently that it's a little unnerving. One thing I will tell you is that 2-minute clock is very frustrating. It is only a limitation on public hearing. Again, you can set up meetings with any of the people sitting here at this table or with the county, and you're not restricted to that 2-minute time interval. That's only just a function of the necessity of running a public meeting and having it end at some point. So I just wanted to remind you that this doesn't have to be the last time you speak on this issue, and you wouldn't be limited to that kind of nerve-wracking 2-minute clock. Jay, do you want to go ahead and start with responding to some of the questions that the public asked you directly?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate that, and appreciate the speakers that came out this evening and the concerns they expressed. I thought I'd start out with ask Karen Miller to respond. The question about the housing types in the fringe area, or adjacent to the fringe areas. And Karen, if you want to start off with that one, then we can go into more of the details on the CARNIP
Sure.
recommendations.
Karen Miller with the Planning Office. So this is, just a note that the amendments regarding housing types is not any change in any policy in the comp plan. It's just basically a compilation of the land use policies and kind of set out as they apply to the topic of housing choices. And so I'll point out that if any sort of higher density other than what's already allowed currently in the zoning district of a particular property, any kind of change of density would require a change in the zoning district. And then that change in the zoning district would require a public hearing in front of the zoning board. So that would be something handled under the zoning regulations. And it's an actual application, and it would be considered in a public hearing like this. And then that would be reviewed to see does this requested density or is it in character with the surrounding neighborhood? And so if this is in the middle of a rural area, then perhaps this would not be appropriate. But that would be handled on a case-by-case basis in front of the zoning board in accordance with the zoning regulations. But that decision would also consider what the comprehensive plan says. And this comprehensive plan amendment is just saying part of your consideration of something like that would need to take into consideration the infrastructure and if there's appropriate infrastructure serving it. And if this is in the urban fringe area, really that's pretty much the appropriate areas for this. And for decades now, that's been, if there's been request for something other than, the rural district, that would be the area to go to, is the urban fringe policy area, because typically that has more development in the area and more infrastructure, but it is always a case-by-case consideration. Thank you.
So, Madam Chairman, Sean Penley, planning staff, I'll try to start with some of the questions I have notes on for CARNIP, and then we can answer any other specific questions if we miss anything. There were several questions about the timing of improvements and why are we changing designations if, there's no capacity there now or no actual volumes there now. The plan, again, for CARNIP, this is already an adopted plan, and a lot of these roads they're not changing the types and the designations that are currently adopted, but the purpose for CARNIP and why it is important is not only for future roadway planning, where there is no actual plan. So, at this time, there's no actual plan to improve any of these areas. But the reason why we designate it on the CARNIP plan and have different types of designation is the main purpose is really for access management and future notice to the public or informing the public or the property owners, especially along arterial roads, about where access will be and what the types will be in the future. This is the plan for what is anticipated for traffic. At any time, any arterial road may be improved when warranted. So if there's a road, regardless, even if it's type 1, 2, or 3, if for whatever reason, if a development was approved and it would change the capacity of that road, it would be required to be upgraded as needed. But there is no plan at this time for any of these roads to be improved. This is really a long-range planning document. So that's one of the things we wanted to clarify. There was questions about public notice again. There's no public notice requirements for a specific comprehensive plan update that affects the entire unincorporated area. There's no way to notify all property owners, But what we do have is we do have our public hearings. We try to post as much information on our planning website, and we do have all of this information is available on our planning website. And I know it's not always easy to find, but certainly anybody could do any search for Johnson County Planning, find our planning website. We have a QR code posted outside this room in the lobby area. That'll direct you to the planning website. Anytime anyone wants to refer to the Planning Commission page, we would always bring any type of public hearing like this before the Planning Commission, so you can always check that. But, and again, staff, as you mentioned, staff is always available to answer any questions. So certainly our contact information is on the website as well. I think there may have been maybe some other specific questions about types of roads and why are they changing or why can't they be changed? Again, these recommended designations for the different current roads are based on the Transportation Connection Plan. That plan is also, as Jeff Foes mentioned, that's on the Public Works website. That plan is available on the Public Works website. And because of those recommendations, that's why we're designating the specific arterial roads and the types of roads that are in this plan. I may have missed some other specific questions, so we're happy to answer any other questions that you have, and Public Works as well.
Yeah, just a couple things. Somebody mentioned that.
Can you state your name?
Oh, Jeff Oss,
That's okay.
Public Works. That somebody mentioned they saw traffic counters out there. Every 3 years, we do countywide traffic counts. So that's part of that. It's not specifically tied to Edgerton Road. So those are being done everywhere across the county. If anybody has any questions at any time, in talking with residents, especially the ones that have been out in the area for a long time, they've heard lots of different things, lots of different ideas, lots of different plans from developers, from different staff over the years. I totally understand any confusion that they might have or what they've heard. They are always welcome to call my office with any rumors, anything that they're hearing that they want, what we think is what we know. Happy to share that with them at any time. So I can answer those questions. We have other staff that can. Planning can answer questions about developments that they know about. So certainly willing to do that at any time, because I totally understand there's been, especially the long timers, they've heard a lot of stuff. And I totally get where they can be confused by that.
Yeah, so Commissioner Garsay here, I have some questions. I don't want to step on the toes of my fellow commissioners. So Mr. Calvin Hayden, Miss Lisa Huppy, and some others, and I apologize, I was trying to write down names and topics, but one of the things I think that was kind of central to their concerns was the fact of so many existing driveways within a close range of what would turn into potentially in the future a 4-lane road, and that it would require houses to potentially be taken. And I guess I was kind of curious when, I'm looking at this map and I see Edgerton Road, I see, roads next to it on either side. Maybe what is the decision process that you would go into and looking at, okay, if we change the designation of this type of road, how would that impact the houses that are taken? And if you moved it over 1 to 2 blocks, would there be less houses taken? Because to me, that seems like that should be a primary driver of deciding not only just access and just kind of some geometry of the roads, but to me, as minimal interference in the daily lives of the residents seems like it should be a driving factor. So maybe you could talk through, when I hear 80 driveways in a short distance, that gives me a lot of pause.
So certainly all that will be taken into account if and when there's ever an alignment study needed to be done for any road. We certainly, even with our safety improvement projects, if we have the opportunity to shift the road a little bit to the north to avoid some properties where we already have right of way, things like that, we try to come up with the most economical, the least impact alignments that we can. Sometimes it's inevitable that you'll wind up having to take, a house that's 40 foot off the road, that it just inevitable at some point, something may have to be taken as part of a large improvement.
Sure.
But we certainly would be looking at alternative alignments when we do that. We'd be looking at what we can save and what we can't, and really trying to balance that with the cost as we move forward. So it's really, we're at that planning stage where we're making a guess as to where we think these improvements are needed. And so, the line on Edgerton Road, it's hard in a study to move that anywhere at this time, because we just don't know.
But maybe a quick question, a follow-up question is, so I'm looking at Evening Star Road to the west, and I'm just curious, was an analysis done if you were to make Evening Star Road? I understand that there isn't continual roads, it looks like, but I'm wondering, would that be an easier impact to the county to go into a more rural road that's less populated and turn that one into a type 2 road versus Edgerton, which already has heavy driveway and residential along that road? I guess I'm kind of curious on your thought process of weighing those two decisions.
So we did take a quick look at the Evening Star alignment. There are large floodplains, floodways through there that would need to be bridged. We would be building over a mile of causeway. In some places, we'd be looking at up to 3 times the cost there. There's a reason why Evening Star doesn't go through. If it was easy to do, it would already be going through. So from that cost standpoint, also from a right-of-way standpoint, it would require the same amount of right-of-way as it would on any other road. So it's just not a practical alignment to be able to build.
And then the second question would be the road to the east of it, Sunflower Road. Maybe talk to me about your thought process behind electing to make Edgerton a type 2 road versus Sunflower.
So, well, Sunflower doesn't go through now all the way up to 143rd. So I don't know what's in there that's kept that from being open. I'm sure at some point the road was officially open back in the 1800s. It was never built for a reason. I don't have an aerial to look right now to be able to see why. So there's probably something in there as well. Could Edgerton Road, the eventual road, swing over one way or the other? It's a possibility. I just can't look far enough into the future to know what's going to be out there to be able to make a determination of exactly where things could go. But Edgerton Road, the south from 151st to the south has always been designated as that type 3. It was 159th to the south has always been designated as that type 3-4 lane. DeSoto has determined that they want to tie into Edgerton Road with their alignment through the Astor Parkway. So it really just makes sense that that's where, no matter where we might put a road, that's where traffic is likely to go. So we're not really dictating where traffic's going. This plan is looking at reacting to where we think it's going to be.
Sean Penley, planning staff. One other thing I will mention on the alignment for Sunflower Road, as you get north of 143rd Street, further north, actually 127th, there is an existing quarry there, the Sunflower Quarry that is to the north, that's in that alignment. That's why there's no plan for any kind of corridor through that area at this time. And as Jeff mentioned, the Edgerton Road, that is the location also of where the city of DeSoto has plans for alignment of their future north-south roadway through the Astor Enterprise Park. One of the question I heard that I forgot to mention, it was a good question. Why, if we don't have the capacity there now for some of these roads, why are we keeping that designation? Why not reduce the designation? Well, again, because the point is, we keep the designation there because of the anticipated traffic volume. If we were to lower the designation, then that would potentially release and allow for more driveways on a road where we don't want to be allowing more driveways. We're trying to keep it kind of where it is for any of the type 3 especially, because again, those are going to be the areas we want to kind of limit the access so that we avoid those potential safety concerns. Same goes for type 2. We don't generally want to lower a designation if there's anticipated traffic volumes expected. Traffic doesn't follow within any one jurisdiction, right? It's going through the entire area, and we need to take that into account. That's why we did conduct that study, and it was commissioned with the KDOT and not just the county, but all the other surrounding jurisdictions, looking at where is the plan for traffic through the region, and that is where the traffic is anticipated, and that's where our recommendations are coming from, is those anticipated future traffic volumes.
And I apologize to my commissioners. I just have two other quick questions, and then please take the floor. I was kind of one of the speakers, Shiloh, I believe, had made a comment that kind of struck with me, is that it seems like this is quite a jump, right? Going from a type 1 to a type 3, but maybe I'm misunderstanding the facts. Did we see from the traffic study such a drastic change that led to such a drastic jump? Or am I misunderstanding the history of the rating of the road?
Yeah, if you look at the original Carnot plan, that study area, that pink area that was there, it was designated as a type 3-4 lane. So it was anticipated that a type 3-4 lane would need to come through that pink study area somewhere. They just didn't know exactly where. Now that DeSoto has firmed up their plans of where they anticipate their north-south road coming through, tying in down to Edgerton Road, it just makes sense that that traffic would continue straight south to where we had the type 3-4 lane designation at 159th.
One last question. I believe, and I apologize, I might have gotten the name wrong. Nancy spoke about kind of a dead end road into Kill Creek. I apologize if I got that incorrect. And when I'm looking at the map, I believe I know which one that you're talking about. And it seems like it's kind of hanging out there by itself. And so I was kind of curious what the rationale was for having kind of a dead end road with type 1s all around it and then a type 2. Feel free to educate me.
That was actually downgraded from, so a previous iteration of Carnot approved a type 3 or type 2-4 lane through there. And we're downgrading that from a type 4 to, or type 2-4 lane to a type 2 lanes, too many types. So we're actually lowering that. I think the main intent of that was to provide access within the Astra Enterprise Park area. Now, there is a corridor designated through the park for it, so it can go through the park there. And then depending on what Olathe does, they are now currently showing a study area, putting a bridge across, I believe it's Captain Creek, that going across that eventually could tie into 111th Street. It might go to 119th. So there is a very small possibility at some point that could be a through road, but I really think that that's more intended more for the Astra Enterprise Park area than anything else. And there's a quarry there to deal with and all that. So
It just seemed odd to me that you would have a higher designation road that feeds into 3 type 1 roads. And so I was just trying to understand, and maybe I'm not understanding the particular location, but it's kind of like a purple tail going into the park, and it's not connected. I'm just trying to understand to make me smarter on it and what I'm missing.
Yeah, we're only showing the area through the unincorporated, so we're not showing the tie-ins into DeSoto in the Astra Enterprise Park. We're not showing where it might tie in someday to a road over into Olathe.
Okay.
So that's why it just kind of hanging out there.
I apologize. I've been kind of monopolizing the floor. You guys, I'm sure, also have questions.
Yeah, Craig Connell. I have 2 questions potentially here. First one, Jeff, on again, this corridor to the north to K10, do you know in the KDOT study if it's driven by truck traffic, the traffic count, or is it by cars going to Astra, or do they do a forecast by type of vehicle?
I don't believe so. I believe it's just done by total vehicles. So that you take a look at the different comprehensive plans, come up with what you think the type of development is going to be, and then there's a rationale, national recognized rationale that takes that, what number of traffic gets generated by that type. For example, a residential house, you expect 10 trips a day coming in and out of that household. So you take that and if you're putting 100 houses in, then all of a sudden you have 1,000 vehicles a day on that road. So it's just, I don't think it really breaks it up by truck or by car. It's just total vehicles.
Okay. Is there, can the county, I guess your department probably, restrict which roads can have semis on them and which ones can't?
If we meet certain conditions, yes.
Like what kind of conditions?
A safety condition that, say, a pavement that would structurally fail, a bridge that isn't sufficient for weight, those types of things, we could make that designation. But just to make a designation because we don't desire trucks on that road, no, we can't really do that.
Okay.
What if it were a safety issue because of all the residential housing? Couldn't you do it at that point?
The issue with that, so the issue with that is that all of our section line roads are open to traffic. So we would highly be doubtful that we would do that on that section line network. Now, for more of a residential network, that, in fact, we have one down on 199th where trucks are getting misguided into a dead-end neighborhood. Something like that, where there's nowhere for them to turn around, we would look at restricting truck traffic there to try to keep them out of that type of situation. But in general, that section line road network is there for vehicles to be able to drive on.
Commissioner Paderas, just have a few follow-ups. Tagging on to what my fellow commissioners were just talking about. It occurs to me that we've already got a pretty good system, I-35, 59 Highway, K10, that's already restricted access, greater level of safety, and potentially a guaranteed way to collect revenue off of these commercial vehicles through scales, et cetera. You know, keep them off of the smaller streets that can't handle that capacity anyway, and keep residents safer. It's just I know it's not in Johnson County, but
I would say at this point, that type of discussion, this really about the plan. We're really getting off base from the study here and the designation of the roadways. This is regardless of type of vehicle. If you'd like to have that conversation, more than happy to have that with you at a separate venue. But we're really getting away from what this plan is and what we're here to talk about.
understood. My other 2 points would be regarding the method of providing notice to surrounding landowners. I mean, listening to the comments that were made, not everyone has social media. Not everyone takes the newspaper, but everyone has an address with a mailbox, and it's possible to send certified mail. So that would guarantee everyone got the notice. I'm just throwing that out there.
And before this is Commissioner Grisey, before you answer too, I do think that even the residents would be more open to even an informal notice like a postcard. I understand certified mail is extremely expensive and extremely time consuming for the county to manage, and you have to track it and get everybody. But even a postcard, I think, even if you run the risk that maybe one or two get lost, that would give a predominant notice. I was just kind of curious what the thoughts were on the method of notice, to try to, we don't want to spend the taxpayers' money inefficiently, and sometimes certified, that's a very expensive method.
That's true.
Good question, Sean Penley, County Plan Staff. No, that's a great question. We've had, we don't typically do mailed notices. Again, there are a lot of parcels in the unincorporated area, and even including any residential properties, whether rural or residential, it would be extremely expensive to mail to all properties. But what we could do, and we could investigate this for future updates for Carnip, we could look at arterial roads and any of those properties with dwellings on those arterial roads. And a postcard is a really good idea. We did do a notice like that when we did the first update to our comprehensive plan for that northwest area. We did send out postcards to all the property owners within a certain area that was affected by those updates in the northwest area. This would be a much larger area. We're talking about the whole unincorporated area, so we'd have to get a gauge on how many properties we're talking about, but that's an option. We do definitely, what we're going towards, though, of course, is making all of our information available online, but certainly understanding that some people don't get the online and they don't get social media updates. We understand that, and we can explore that and look at what would the potential number of properties be that are on with dwellings on arterial roads, and then consider that for future updates.
Yeah, the Commissioner Grisey, I appreciate that, and I think it's a great idea. I don't know that every single person in the county would need a postcard, mainly the ones maybe that were adjacent to a change of designation or something that would seem, that would seem helpful to those individuals to be able to voice. And even if it's not a perfect process with the postcard, that might be a nice compromise to, spend the taxpayers' money judiciously, yet still provide a large notice to a large number of people who may be affected. Sorry to.
No, I appreciate that. And my last point of concern regarded where information can be found, because if I was hearing things correctly, there's some things that are on the planning department site, some things that are on public works site, but that aren't necessarily cross-referenced or linked. And I know from personal experience, unless I know the specific search terms, it's difficult to find things just by going to the planning commission, or correction, the planning department website and just trying to search for what link do I click on to get to who I need to talk to. And so I don't know. Obviously that's some website development, but I feel like there's got to be a better way to allow people to find the information without having to guess what's the perfect search term.
Yeah, certainly we could explore that as well. We could obviously put a link. I think all of the information that we've discussed this evening is on the planning website for Carnip and our comprehensive plan update. The transportation connection plan, that was a prior study, is on the Public Works website. I'm sure that's something that we could easily put a link on our planning page to the Public Works page for that, for related information. We could certainly do that as well.
Members of Commission, Jay Leipzig again. I will say, yeah, we do try to cross-link them when possible. That issue with that connection plan being on the Public Works site, that is something, yes, we should have that cross-linked together. However, we usually set up a portal where we put all of the documents together. And so you just go to that page, and then you look at the entire plan and all the surrounding documents, everything related to it. QR codes is another method we've used in the past too, where you download the QR code, you get the entire or portfolio of all the documents. So we can look at that. I know as this moves forward in the process, that's something the Board of County Commissioners also has a very kind of a robust information gathering link and portal too. So we'll certainly look at that as well. But we do try to cross-link them when we can. There's a few of them that we may have missed, but we do, and I'm thinking the example that we used for the land use update a few years ago, which is when we did send out a postcard. And so that was pretty effective in terms of getting the word out to the public and letting them know about it. And then also some of the utility scale solar development, those regulations that were proposed a couple of years ago.
Thank you.
Oh, this is Karen Miller. Just to note, any change to the comprehensive plan or the zoning regulations require a public hearing like tonight in front of the Planning Commission. So if people, are interested, they can just look at the Planning Commission agenda every month. It's published. The QR code on this agenda goes straight to the Planning Commission website, and just click on the month and the year, and you'll see the agenda. It's published about a week before the meeting, and you can see exactly what the Planning Commission is talking about.
To be fair, though, that does put the onus back on the resident to constantly be watching
Mm.
that
Yeah.
to see if there's something that would affect them versus being informed that there's something that might affect you that you should be
Yeah.
interested in.
It's different than just being notified by mail, but if that's something you're interested in and would like to do that, that is probably the best way to always know that you know what's going on. So
Commissioner Grisay here. One of the things I thought I'd share really quick with the public before we talk about next steps is I have found the members of the staff to be incredibly welcoming and open to talking. And I don't know that I was expecting that when I think a lot of people on the board have some experience with your house or something, right? That drove them to get interested in the public government. I think probably all of us have some story of something that caused us to be interested. I think that you will find a group of people who are incredibly hardworking and incredibly caring and willing to talk with you. And I would challenge you to come talk with them as well to make sure that your concerns are being heard and they understand your concerns. Their opinions have been changed. More facts always change people's minds. But the people at the county are also very hardworking and care about the county just as much as you guys do. I will open it up to my commissioners. One of the items on our agenda is a vote on the Carnot plan. I will just share my opinion and I will open it up to you guys. I don't feel prepared to make a vote today. I feel like I have at least 3 topics that I would like more investigation and information on that, because there have been a lot of concerns raised tonight by residents that have kind of given me pause to feel comfortable to vote yes or no. And if forced to vote, I'd probably vote no. And so my initial thought would be to instruct the planning staff to investigate, some of the questions if we needed more information or wanted more investigation. But I'm open to your guys' wise counsel if you want to do a different plan for a vote tonight, but I'm sharing where I'm at.
Commissioner McGank here. I feel exactly the same way as you did. I was just thinking that I would like to see you to make an honest, hard effort and present that to us to find a different route. I'm looking at this and the people that are here and listening to what they have to say. And I can't help but feel that if I was in their position, I would be every bit as upset. I was in their position. You were, because we all live on Black Bob Road and that was a process that we just went through recently. So it's a little raw to me right now. So I appreciate you all being here. And I feel that this needs to be examined further because once this is put in the Carnot, this is where it's going to happen at some point in time. I mean, I know you say it might not, but more than likely it will. And so I would really like to explore other avenues and given other options to do something different here.
Commissioner McGann.
Oric, it's kind of hard for me to, without knowing the questions that you're seeking to be answered, to know whether it's worth delaying or not.
Sure. No, I think that's a very fair question. So I had just written down 3 things, maybe kind of keying into something. I think the decision obviously on Edgerton, the people in the audience have presented a lot of concerns. I think I would want to know what other options are there and what are the pros and cons of those other options. You kind of listed them out, but I think I'd like to really see, okay, if instead of Edgerton Road, we looked at Sunflower and, there were kind of pros and cons of Sunflower. If we looked at Evening Star Road, or is there a way to avoid a more heavily residential area in Edgerton and jog over? I don't know what the options are, and that's your level of expertise, but I think to feel confident in approving or not approving this plan, I need to fully understand what other options there are before we make a decision that could take somebody's home. That's just weighs heavily on me. The second question, I need to understand more about these like little dogtails in Kill Creek. It's just, it doesn't make sense to me that there is a road that is above a level 1 that doesn't connect to anything else other than level 1 roads. It just, especially given that this is a horse community with residential houses on it, it seems concerning to me to increase that. Again, not knowing, I understand that this isn't a plan. It's not like the road's going to start next week, but I think I understand that. The third issue that I had was more of not related to this particular plan, but maybe a discussion, an instruction to the planning staff to come to us with a plan of what an additional notice requirement would look like for the future. And it was more of a, let's go down an investigatory path of what would, if we were to do a postcard notice in the future, what could that look like? What would those regulations be? Where would those regulations sit? And what would that process look like to get that formally adopted? So those were going to be my 3. The first 2, obviously more pressing. What are your thoughts?
Well, I guess on Edgerton Road specifically, a large part of it is already designated. Correct.
It's a level 2, right?
Level 2.
Oh, it's already a level?
The Sean Penley plan is that Edgerton Road is
159.
currently type 3. It's currently type 3 adopted and is proposed to remain type 3. So
Okay, so maybe I'm misunderstanding. I thought that 159th South was changing.
No, 159th to the south has always been a type 3 carnip from its inception. It's just the 2 miles from 159th up to 143rd that are looking to change with this plan.
Okay.
So again, we're not changing, but a lot of these folks are already in the position that they're expressing concern about. Right, but it's been that way for years. And again, I think it's important for everybody to understand, we are not approving any improvement project tonight. And we're not voting to move anybody out of their house.
Right. I mean, I think that's a fair comment. Sorry, I think I had a misunderstanding. So south of 159th, just to make sure it's crystal clear, is already a carnip type 3 4-lane?
Correct.
And so the adjustment being made is extending that to the north to 143rd?
That is correct.
Okay, and what is that north of 100, between 159th and 143rd, what is it currently?
It's a type 1 currently. But it's always been in that pink area that ultimately would designate something in there as the type 3 4-lane.
Again, Tim Orrick, I mean, we're trying to figure out how to bridge that gap. And it's pretty obvious you've got the south leg and you've got a north leg and you got to connect the 2 of them.
Madam Chair,
Makes sense to jog out of the way 2 or 3 miles for a 2-mile gap.
Madam Chair, Sean Penley, planning staff, if you would like, I can try to just reiterate again on the maps.
I apologize. I feel like maybe I'm the slowest one in the room. Sorry,
No,
Mr. Penley.
there's a lot of different roads. So if we want to talk about Edgerton Road specifically, I just try to show this again to update everyone. This is the current adopted Carnip map. Edgerton Road is already a type 3 designated road from 159th Street south. This is the green dashed line with the red asterisks here at these nodes for the intersections. It's already designated type 3. The only area that's changing that we're connecting now, just because previously it was shown as the shaded area, is a type 3. We knew the type 3 would have to connect through here somewhere. It's now identified as we're going through the Astra Enterprise Park, again, connecting with Edgerton Road. So we're going to connect the remaining 2-mile stretch here, specifically designated as type 3. We didn't know exactly where the road would go. Now, because of where DeSoto is planning it, connecting up there at 143rd Street in the alignment of Edgerton Road, it makes sense for that stretch, that remaining 2-mile stretch, That's why the proposed plan, again, staying consistent with that entire stretch of Edgerton Road, still type 3. The only area that now changes is the 2-mile stretch from 143rd to 159th being specifically identified as type 3 to be consistent with the rest of the road.
Hank, I'd like to be really clear on something. To me, there's a big difference when you say type 3, whether it's a 2-lane or 4-lane. And is it my understanding, is that correct, that from 159 south has always been designated as a type 3 4-lane, not 2?
That's correct. The current, and that's shown on the current map, type 3, 4 lanes.
Also, the red nodes that are shown on that original map were considered to be interchanges. And we are removing the interchanges from this as well. So that's part of the change. But originally, when that was planned, it was planned to be more like a 4-lane highway with interchanges. We're looking at not enough traffic to be that of the level of facility that needs to have the interchanges. So we'd be looking at grade intersections.
When you, Commissioner Gersay, when you say interchanges, do you mean stoplights or am I?
No, like divided interchange that you see on highways.
Oh, okay, like entrance
They were
ramps
called
or,
grade separation structure.
okay,
So one would go over the other and have ramps. So
Okay.
that's what was originally envisioned with Carnup, and we're not seeing nearly the traffic to require that level of roadway.
So again, Commissioner Oric, from DeSoto South, from K10 and Edgerton Road, how far south does Edgerton or DeSoto control now?
To 143rd.
Yes, that's true.
We're
They've,
only talking about between 143rd and 159. Correct?
correct, 2 miles.
With respect to
That's
Edgerton Road specific.
That's correct. The 2-mile stretch that's now being clarified is the 2-mile stretch from 143rd to 159th. That's the only area that's changing on the designation.
DeSoto's going forward regardless of what the county does.
Yes, DeSoto will control anything within their jurisdiction and they have their future plans. Just like we have Carnup, they have their future road plans.
Commissioner Praderis, so from currently 143rd to 215th, Edgerton Road is a drivable road, 2 lanes, correct? Even though it's designated a type 3, 4-lane from 159th to 215th and soon to be also all the way up to 143rd. In its current condition as a 2-lane road, if you were to give it a classification based on the current types in the handout tonight, what would the designation be?
Yeah, I'm not sure I understand your question.
So it's currently a 2-lane road.
Right.
Given the traffic volume and the driveway access, would you call it a type 1 or a type 2? What would you call it if you had to name it today based on its current condition?
So based on if I had to name it today based on its current condition from 159th to the south, it would be a type 3, 4-lane.
Well, that's what it's designated.
That's what it's designated, but also that's what planning has been enforced on the access control standards. So I would still consider it a type 3, 4-lane.
Okay, so with the type 3, 4-lane, what kind of spacing are you allowed on the driveway access?
You'd have to look at the 1,320 feet.
1320? Okay, do we currently have that with all those driveways that were talked about along that road?
Probably not, because there would have been some driveways grandfathered in before the Carnup Road. I mean, that road's been probably open since 1880.
Right.
So there's probably entrances that were grandfathered in. So, but all the new ones since Carnup
If
was approved should be at that spacing.
John Penley planning staff, I want to just clarify too, we don't designate any roads in the county on their current condition. All roads would be, just a 2-lane road, all arterial roads. We're again looking at future, what's the anticipated future? This is a long-range planning document. We have to look at the future traffic volumes and where traffic is traveling. So that's what we're looking at, not the existing conditions of the road.
Okay, so it's a 2-lane road, currently 45 miles per hour?
Yes.
What's the traffic volume currently?
I don't know it off the top of my head.
Would you say it's somewhere between 2,000 and 7,500 vehicles?
Probably, yes.
Okay. So according to this, I know you don't refer to roads by designation in their current condition, but what they could be. But if you were to, it would be a type 1, 2-lane with that traffic volume and that speed.
I suppose, yes, but it's kind of irrelevant.
I understand your point, but I'm just saying
and-
that does show quite a jump though.
Right, but I also want to say, if you were to vote to not to approve this change and leave that 2 miles as a type 1, 2-lane, and the traffic volumes warranted, it would still also need to be 4-lane in the future.
Well-
The capacity would be a lot less than it should be because we didn't follow the access control of the type 3, 4-lane.
Well, that 2 miles is DeSoto controlled though, so it wouldn't matter what we
No, from
decided tonight.
143rd to 159th. So regardless of what, I mean, at some point, that road could need to be 4-lane regardless of what designation gets decided.
I see what you're saying. It's north of 143rd that's DeSoto controlled.
Correct.
Okay.
Commissioner Oric, and so if we don't designate it in this way, it's possible that infill growth in the future would cause us to have to be more disruptive in the future
Correct.
if this type of road becomes necessary. In other words, right now, relatively few houses are affected. But if more growth takes place and property is subdivided in the future, more driveways, then in the future, we might have to displace more people than if we do nothing.
Madam Chair, Sean Penley,
Really about planning and not
That's-
voting that we're going to be building a road.
that's,
Yeah,
Doing, and I think it's a red herring to say doing nothing is better for everybody.
no, this Commissioner Grisay, I think I'm sympathetic to the notion that you could have a drastic change in a road. And that in the designation of a road. So that particular road, and I understand more now, thank you for the education on that, between 159th and 143rd. But to me, that seems like a drastic jump going from a type 1 2-lane road to a type 3 4-lane road. That seems like a big jump. Would it be potential to do a smaller jump? Would it be, I'm just, it seems like I think what I've heard is we're not seeing the traffic volume now. It seems like a drastic jump without evidence that is dictating that jump. I could be completely incorrect and I'm willing to be convinced otherwise. It just seems like a drastic jump when we're not seeing traffic volume. And I think, I understand you're saying that it's not a relevant topic, but I think what his point, and I would say, I'm hoping I'm not being too irrelevant by saying it, is that the current road is a type 1 2-lane road and it's handling it just fine. Why are we making such a drastic jump to a level 3 when we're going to revisit the plan in 5 years? Is the sense that this plan would, that this area would experience such a drastic change within 5 years that we need to be prepared for level 3? Maybe, and I could be misunderstanding the goal of the plan. I understand this is forward looking. I'm just saying this seems like a drastic a drastic jump without data that appears to me to convince me to make that drastic jump.
But again, as we've been talking about, that drastic jump only occurs if it's development driven. And what you're gonna have is you've got 4-lane to the north of 143rd. You've already got 4-lane designated to the south of 159. So you've got 2 miles there where you're gonna have.
Part of the modeling also predicts what drivers tend to do. So if the the road coming down through DeSoto, through the plant, ties in at Edgerton Road. And Edgerton Road stays as a 2-lane road, and we build out, 143rd. Are drivers going to make a left turn, go a mile or two down the road and make a right turn and follow a different route, or are they going to continue straight across and on down? So that's part of the modeling, is also driver expectancy.
Sure.
So, drivers tend to go straight. GPS tends to route drivers straight. So, we're dealing with a prediction of what the planning or what the land use is going to be in the future, but we're also doing a prediction of how people are going to drive as well. So those two combined make it so that Edgerton Road is that preferred route. Now, the modeling also shows that once Edgerton Road starts getting really busy, some people, especially if they're going more to Gardner than Edgerton area, are going to make that left turn and go 3 miles down and go down Four Corners, I believe it is, that we're also, or Moonlight, that we're also looking at being a type 2 4-lane. So it is splitting. At some point, the traffic volumes get to the point where they do kind of split, and some people will make that maneuver as well.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Jared, I think you're, let's turn, there we go. I'm trying to get in my lane or our lane here to use a road term that I understand. So DeSoto had, I thought I heard you say DeSoto has already designated their piece of this, their projected piece of this as a type 3 4-lane road. Is that correct?
No.
Okay.
What I'm saying is the original CARNUP designated that study area as needing a type 3 4-lane. Now, DeSoto,
They
depending
haven't
on,
made the decision yet, is that?
yeah, depending on what sort of development they're doing, what they can get their developers to build for them, what they're going to have to pay for is all going to dictate on their timing, whether they build a 2-lane or a 4-lane.
Okay.
So, that's going to, how that Astra Enterprise Park develops is probably
But
going
right now, all we're really deciding is to whether or not to conform this 2-mile strip with what we've already got south of, what is it, 159th Street?
correct.
Commissioner, one comment is all the people on this board have the power to request anything on this CARNUP be different. So the fact that it's currently a type 3 4-lane does not mean that we are now locked into that forever and ever. So, I mean, I appreciate that the change that we're talking about is this small 2-mile lane. That doesn't mean that we are handcuffed to not request. Obviously, changes are happening to this entire area all the time. So I just wanted to point
Okay,
that out.
well-
We can request changes to any part of the plan.
We can, and we can suggest that to the commissioners, but if that's already the situation, the Board of County Commissioners have already approved that designation. And so we would be asking them then to consider changing it, I guess, is what you're saying?
Yeah, I think the process as I understand it, and I would request my staff experts counsel me if I'm wrong, is that changes are being made to this plan right now. The wise and, educated, and again, I say this to the members of the public, the individuals here from Public Works and from the county are not doing anything intentional to anybody within this room, and trying to rely on facts and data as they make these recommendations. These are recommendations. At the end of the day, the commissioners on this board can vote to accept the recommendations, request additional information, or direct a change. Now, we are not the end all be all. We're appointed. Whatever gets finalized would then go to the Board of County Commissioners, and they could approve or do the same thing that we're doing, would be to direct a change or to adopt what we do or reject what we do. And so, I just would suggest that, again, I appreciate the kind of keying me into that difference, a misunderstanding I was having, but that doesn't mean that we're also handcuffed to the current designations. Obviously, there are changes being proposed to current designations right now.
Craig Connell, I have just a point of information here. I do know that last week's council meeting in DeSoto, the green line from 111th to 103rd Street on Evening Star, city council voted to acquire the right of way to make that 4-lane. So their intent, I'm sure, is to make that 4 lanes through Ad Astra Park. So if we would try to change this back, keep it to a 2-lane road, then, I mean, obviously, there's got to be some coordination with DeSoto on that, but they just voted to acquire the right of way to make that 4 lanes.
So just to make sure that you're talking about the green snip between 103rd and 111th, that's
On
green?
Evening Star. That portion of that corridor is, they're want to make a 4 lane.
And that got voted and approved by the city council in DeSoto for 4 lanes?
Yep. Well, to acquire the right of way.
Okay.
Doesn't mean they're going to build it tomorrow, but they're at least thinking ahead to buy the right of way, the front.
No, that's helpful to know.
Commissioner Paderas, it sounds like that this is not only developer driven, but driver behavior driven. So if, regardless of what developers put in, if people commuting in and out of the Astra Enterprise Park choose to use that route, it can impact, obviously, traffic volumes and then what people will suggest occur in terms of an improvement on that road. Is that correct?
Exactly. And that's what we're trying to predict. That's all we're doing here is trying to predict where that development's going to go and then how people are going to access that.
Okay, I understand it. And I would say that I agree with the 3 points that you brought up, and I would perhaps add to that prior to voting, I feel it would be responsible for us to, since we obviously have had a lot of confusion about the parameters that went into this, to perhaps get a more in-depth understanding of the study, the parameters that it looked at, all the options it looked at, things of that nature. Because, I mean, I know we got some summaries, but I feel like it might have been a little too summarized, if that makes sense.
And just to make sure that I understand, the request would also be, you're saying for the particular traffic study that underlied the recommendations?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Any other opinions? I mean, obviously, I offered mine, whether we want to do a formal vote or do we want to, one of the other options that we could do is kind of adjourn, have a vote at our next meeting, give ourselves a time to request more information as commissioners. You know, I certainly would appreciate that, but obviously if there's a majority that would rather just vote tonight, I can place a vote. It may not be favorable, but I could place a vote.
Commissioner McGank, I've never driven this road. I want to go out there and physically drive it, see the houses on it and where y'all live, and make a better decision that way instead of right now where I feel unprepared to make a good decision. I want to see it. So I'd like to, you know.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Paderas, I would move that we would delay the vote until we have more information and can make an actual informed decision prior to voting. Yeah.
Who would like to make?
Oh, sure. Sorry, Mr.
Madam Chair,
Leipzig.
sorry, I was just going to kind of reiterate what you all are talking about. I think, you know, there is a lot of information and we're not in any hurry to get this finished. So, or before the BOCC. So if you want some additional time, you get some clarification. I think there is some confusion on the purpose of CARNP, and it's really all about driveway spacing in terms of the and providing that thorough access. And that's where a type 4 or type 3, I mean, having with the spacing requirements really benefits those property owners, so you don't have constant curb cuts as you drive down those roads. And I think that's something to keep in mind. This isn't a construction plan or a development plan. It is a long-term transportation thoroughfare plan. And so I think if you think about it in those terms, I think having some additional information and some detail on the the transportation connection plan and the modeling that was used and what the particular factors were for the modeling might be helpful. We certainly could queue this back up again, continue the hearing, and reschedule. I think, I don't know what our next date is in October. Is it the 23rd? October 28th would be our next regularly scheduled planning commission meeting. If that would give you some additional clarity, I think that would certainly be a very positive aspect. Staff wouldn't have any concerns with doing that as well.
Commissioner Starrett, another thing I would like to know is the interface with DeSoto. I would like to know, I mean, I don't want us to build a bridge to nowhere. I want to, if they're going to be doing ultimately, and it's more likely to grow there, I suppose, than it is in Johnson County, we have to anticipate, it would seem to me, one of our obligations is to anticipate how we're going to fit our piece into this puzzle. So I would like to know about that.
Commissioner Gersay, I guess maybe one of the questions would be how should we go about getting this information? One idea I'd have, but I just kind of curious on the staff's reaction, is if the different commissioners were to email the staff questions that they had, and then we were all to get follow-up, like if we could all get copied on the responses. I don't know if that would be helpful in advance of the next meeting. And obviously that information could also be made out to the public, since all of our communications are open to the public. But I was just trying to think, I think it'd be helpful to have that information ahead of the next meeting so that I could digest it and think through it.
Commissioner.
Craig Connell, I have a kind of a add-on to that. And it's, maybe we need KDOT here too, I don't know, but it seems to me that we're trying to shoehorn this into Johnson County. Did anybody look at Douglas County, just a couple miles to the west, where it's all rural up through there and very sparsely populated, because I live over in that very west part of the county, so I drive that a lot. And it's a lot less populated than Johnson County is. Did KDOT look at that? And should we not quiz them about that?
Yeah, Sean Penley, County Planning Staff. We absolutely coordinated with all of the jurisdictions in this region, including Douglas County, Miami County, City of DeSoto, City of Olathe, City of Edgerton, City of Gardner. We absolutely coordinated with all those jurisdictions. They all contributed and were on the technical committee for the Transportation Connection Plan. These recommendations are based on the recommendations from the Transportation Connection Plan. They agreed with the modeling. They were part of the technical committee. We absolutely did coordinate with them. We could provide any additional background data on that Transportation Connection Plan, but that was absolutely all in coordination with all the jurisdictions in the area.
Madam Chair, one thing, Jay Leipzig, I would suggest is we have all of the comments, everything that was stated this evening, everything included in the packet is all part of the public record. So, and that will take a few days to get that back. That is transcribed. So I'd like to look at that, and staff can develop, in terms of kind of summarizing what some of those questions were and try to address those. The other thing that I'm thinking about is we probably, Public Works will want some time to look at certainly look at the questions and that modeling. That may require some either further review, kind of looking at that. So we could try for that October 28th meeting, or if you think we should even delay it until November, I don't know. That's a hypothetical question. You think it might take some time? So maybe if we came back in November.
I would certainly recommend looking at the study that's on the Public Works website, and any specific questions you have after looking at that would be much easier to answer.
Sure.
Than, kind of trying to provide a general that may or may not catch what you're looking for. So, we can still prepare a more general one, but specific questions are much easier for us to answer.
Yes, I completely agree. The other thing is, I think we've delayed having a public vote on the board members, and so maybe we could also push that to the next meeting in October as well on the agenda.
Yes, Madam Chair, maybe what a good plan would be our next meeting date is October 28th. If we're talking about the election of officers, we could tried to address, at that time, we'll have the minutes back. We look at the questions, we could try to address, provide some answers for some of these things. If we still feel like we need more time, we could extend it further. But at least I think that gives us a kind of a basis moving forward.
Yeah, I think Commissioner Grisey, I think that's a great idea. It just, if there was any mechanism for us to get that information ahead of time, obviously I know now where to look for the traffic study. And so I think just getting that information ahead of time, I know would help us understand it better.
Fred Sterrett again. So in terms of our timeline, you say this is not an emergency, obviously. We have time to work through this stuff.
Yes, Commissioner Sterrett, we're not in any, there's no other obligation to have this completed at a certain date. If overall, I would say by the end of the year, it'd be but there's nothing that's pressing. There's not an established deadline that you're working to get this finished. So frankly, our thought was, we're also doing an update on our zoning and subdivision regulations. Having this CARNP update and those comprehensive plan amendments completed before the zoning and subdivision regulations get approved, which will probably be next year. So we have time.
Great.
I would also encourage residents that have specific questions as well. Feel free to get a hold of us to talk through those issues. Be more than happy to do so.
Yeah, Commissioner Grisey, and just remember that that's without a 2-minute timer. So you can have long conversations and back and forths. And I have found the members of our county staff to be second to none in professionalism, education, and a desire to make the county better. It's just there may be a difference of opinions, or you may want other things explored, and talking with them directly is the best way to get your voice heard. And in addition to the public hearing, obviously. Just as a point of question, do we leave the public hearing open or do we close the public hearing?
What I would suggest, Madam Chair, is to continue it to a date certain.
Okay.
So it continue it to October 28th. And then if you need additional time, then we continue it to a subsequent date. But continue it to a date certain of October 28th.
Can I get a motion from my fellow commissioners for that?
Commissioner Paderas, I'd move that we would continue the hearing to October 20th.
Craig Connell, I second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, then we vote to continue the public hearing. I think that do we have anything else on the agenda? Sorry, I'm a little off. Do we still want to do the director's report?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Jay Leipzig, just a couple of things. Just in your packet are the applications reviewed by the Board of County Commissioners from August 14th through September 4th, 2025. If you have any questions about that, please reach out to me. The other item to let you know about is, as I mentioned, we're in the process of updating our zoning and subdivision regulations. We do have 3 open house meetings scheduled in the county to talk about that. And these are an open house format where you can stop in anytime. The first meeting is on October 7th from 6:30 to 8 o'clock p.m. At the New Century Fieldhouse at 551 New Century Parkway. And the second meeting is October the 8th, so the next evening, 6:30 to 8 o'clock p.m. at the Johnson County Administration Building in the lower level of this building in room 201. And then the third meeting is scheduled for October 9th from 7 to 8:30 p.m. in the Stillwell Elementary School. That's at 6410 West 199th Street in Stillwell. So if you're available, if you'd like to stop in and attend those meetings, we'll have display boards, so staff will be present. Our consultant will be present, be able to answer any questions you might have. And it's a drop-in open house format, so you can stop in anytime. And that's all I have this evening.
Go ahead.
Sean Penley, planning staff. One other thing I would like to make mention, our next meeting on October 28th will not be in this room.
Oh.
We were just informed this morning by the county's information technology department that This room is going through a technology update in the month of October, so it will not be available. So we'll try to relocate this room, the meeting to the lower level of this building. We'll post all that information on our website as well and put signs up, but we're going to probably meet in one of the larger conference rooms in the lower level. So we just want to give everyone a heads up on that for next month's meeting. Thanks.
All right. Any old business or new business that my commissioners would like to bring to the table? All right. In that case, can I get a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
And a second? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay. Thank you again. And thank you, members of the public, for coming on a rainy Tuesday. We appreciate you.